Hey, thanks for joining us today. Every day in this country, people walk out of a system that was never designed to welcome them back. And most of the time, the world doesn't say yes. But this April, Persevere and Banyan Labs for Fair Chance Month, we're asking a simple question. What happens when we do say yes? Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're going to call this Beyond the Record. And we're going to have a conversation today with Persevere CEO Stacey and Banyan Labs' CTO Matthew Wallace about what it really looks like to say yes to second chances. Hi, guys. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Awesome. And of course, my partner in crime, Emma Graham, who I feel like we're everywhere together and I wouldn't have it any other way. Emma, thanks
Same.
again so much for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
For sure, for sure. Just before we get set up, guys, let's talk a little bit about who we have. So, Stacey, just introduce yourself and tell us what it's like in the daily life of a CEO.
Right. So Stacey Books, CEO of Persevere. I have been here since day one. So I've been able to really see the entire program grow from nothing to what it is today. Truth be told, being the CEO was never my dream, but here we are. And I think, being in this role and really kind of understanding every aspect of the program just kind of helps ensure that our students do receive the type of support that we want them to have, because it does impact their success at the end of the day. This role is stressful. It's 24/7, but I don't think I would have it any other way.
Awesome. Awesome. We're so glad that you took time out of your busy schedule to be with us. We know that for nonprofits, this is grant season, and a lot of times those decision makers are hunkered down trying to get that data together and get those shipped. So we appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Hey, Matthew, we have the CTO of Banyan Labs, who also functions, I guess, as the CTO for Persevere. For those of you who don't know, Banyan Labs is the social enterprise of the nonprofit Persevere. So we're partners in crime. We do work together. Matthew, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. Thanks again. I've been in software engineering. Well, I would say I started off wanting to just be a web designer back in the way early 2000s. So I've been doing this quite a while. I made a transition over my career into being more of an engineer and and an engineering lead. Just through trial and error, and I'm completely self-taught in that regard, because the resources that we had back then was not as prevalent as we have today. But fast forward to I'd say about 2 or 3 years ago, I met Stacey through another business that I used to work for. And I started volunteering with Persevere and did some mentorship, things like that. And then it just turned into an opportunity where I could come and actually work here and help run the Banyan Lab side of things. I do, as mentioned earlier, I do a little bit on the Persevere side of the house as well, because it helps us really cohesively marry the two programs together. Because the biggest thing that we do at Banyan that I was really excited to be involved in is we run a on-the-job training program inside of Banyan, but we also we are a legitimate, real company, and I have a lot of experience running software engineering companies, so a lot of times we'll end up hiring full-time some of our OJT on-the-job training folks, because they show a lot of real promise, and we're happy to do that. But then we've also seen that those folks go on to work for other businesses. I've had several people leave our program because they got a job while they were with us. So we're happy to support either of those opportunities. And we hope we get to keep the best of the best. But sometimes, the mission is to get them a long-term career. So if they see an opportunity and they're able to grab it, then we always encourage that too.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you both so much for being with us today. As stated, right, we are celebrating, recognizing, shouting from the megaphone, right, that this is Fair Chance Month. And as a fair chance institution, right, we're heralding that message. And who better to talk about that today than both of you? So, the way this is going to work is we'll take turns, Emma and I will, asking you questions. Most of the questions will be for both of you. We do have a couple that are specified for each of you because of the type of work that you do, and we'll indicate that. But, guys, this is just meant to be a conversation. And I know that people will appreciate your perspective and your insight. So, Stacey, we're going to start with you, and this question is just for you,
Okay.
right? At Persevere, we intentionally use the term fair chance rather than second chance. Tell us why that distinction matters.
Gosh. Um, you know, at some point, all of us need an opportunity to rewrite our story. Some of us need third and fourth chances. I know I did. And so, I think it puts a label on individuals when we say that they're in need of a second chance. I think because it does say that that person has done something wrong, right? And so there's that stigma that comes along with it. With a fair chance, it really opens it up to anybody,
Yeah.
whether it is because they don't have the right technology training to go into a position. Maybe there's not a college degree that's attached to it. Maybe there was that time in life when they made a mistake, but giving them that fair opportunity or that fair chance to start that story over is really what we're looking for. One of the things that we've worked really hard at Persevere is to not look at someone and only see them for what that mistake was. It's really looking them from a human perspective and recognizing that all humans make mistakes. And so I wish that we could get rid of some of the second chance language and really just focus on opportunities for everyone, because I think that just kind of humanizes the need than anything.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Definitely. And, we might interchange second chance, fair chance throughout the interview. But the next question is actually for both of you. And Matthew, if you want, we'll have you going first. But can you share a moment that changed how you think about second chances or fair chance hiring?
Yeah, I think to kind of reiterate a little bit of what Stacey just said, the way I've always looked at it is my own story is I never went through anything like some of the folks that we have at Banyan or go through the Persevere program. But one thing that I think everybody it resonates with everybody is, life isn't easy and we all make mistakes. But the other side of that coin is when you find yourself in that situation, what are you going to do about it? I was fortunate to be raised by a blue collar, work hard set of parents. So, it's usually some people don't grow up with that opportunity and that mentality. So I think I can't point out I don't want to point out a very specific example, but what I've seen since working with Persevere and now coming to Banyan is the majority of the folks that are successful are given an opportunity to look at where they're at in life, and they're given tools and opportunity and training and mentorship so that they can rebuild their life if that's what they need to do, or they can just add another opportunity. Sometimes they just didn't get the opportunity, so they made an alternate decision. It's been more about seeing it firsthand and validating that when we all are given opportunity, more people are going to leverage that than not. And that comes out in the numbers that Persevere's seen over the years from a recidivism rate being really low. And then also just seeing that even if they don't go on to be a programmer or a software engineer, just having the opportunity to learn how to learn and learn how to take advantage of opportunity, we've seen more success just in that alone than just becoming a software engineer. So I would say every person that comes through the program, I see some example of that as far as the success rate alone speaks for itself. And everybody that's been through the program, whether they go on to be software engineers or not, I've seen improvement, so, and that's probably roughly around 40 or 50 people over the last year that I alone have been involved with at Banyan. So, and there's the numbers higher than that when you look at Persevere as a whole.
Yeah, I really like that you touch on that point of, we might have students or graduates who come through the program and at the end of it, they think, this was a great experience, but tech might not be for me. But our goal is really to help uplift whatever that next phase is for them, right? So I appreciate you bringing that up. And Stacey, same question to you. Was there kind of a moment that made you rethink fair chance hiring?
Oh gosh. Yeah, it's I think for me it's just extremely personal. There is a quote by a gentleman, it's by John Hope Bryant, and he says the most dangerous person in the world is a person without hope. And there was a time in my life where I didn't have any hope. You find yourself in a position where you feel like you've run out of runway. And so you start taking risk and doing things that you normally would not do. And so I was incarcerated for 2 years and 8 months. And during that time period, just looking at the women around me and trying to figure out, outside of us having the common denominator of a crime or a conviction, how were we the same, right? And what I started to realize is individuals that do have a conviction, a lot of us have a lot in common, and that's childhood trauma. There's PTSD, there is codependency, there's substance abuse. Realizing that we're equal, but yet different was really that moment where I knew that I had a purpose and that purpose was to make a difference in the lives of someone else. If you know the Persevere story, then you know that I met our founder, Sean Hossman, when I was incarcerated. And when you talk about somebody seeing you at your lowest moment, that was the lowest for me. And so explaining to him, what I had witnessed and how I wanted to take my experience in workforce development from a staffing side of the house or recruiting side of the house and providing those resources, but realizing no one was going to succeed until we really got to the root of the problem. And so I think that when we look at being looking at fair chances and really providing an opportunity is when you step back and you really look at the person from a different lens. And that's when you see the importance of not only our employer partners, but just society as a whole, whether it's housing. I mean, there's all of these different opportunities that are needed for our individuals.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I had to take myself off mute. I muted myself and forgot to take it off. But thank you so much for both of you for the answer to those questions.
All right. Emma, I think you have a question for Matthew next.
That might be my bad. I apologize.
No, you're good. So full disclosure, maybe people who don't know us won't appreciate it. I spend most of my days with Matthew and Emma spends most of her days with Stacey. So we thought we'll ask each other the opposite questions, right? So that just for that balance.
And let me just add to, Matthew didn't say this, but the real hook into Persevere was I tugged at his heartstring a little bit. Persevere, Banyan side. So, don't go unsaid.
Well, and it doesn't help too that I have to switch screens to see these questions. And for some reason, my video is not populating on a smaller screen the way that it normally does. So I'm like, I physically, when I'm looking at the questions, can't see anybody. And I'm like, oh.
It's like,
Matthew, so the question that I have for you, Matthew, with your time working with Banyan and, all of the different projects that you all have worked on, have created, have built, from that perspective, how does fair chance hiring impact team culture and performance that you've seen?
Yeah, I would say that is the biggest thing that I've noticed since running this company versus any other large organization I've worked for or led. The culture from, especially, I would say the more people you have part of your organization who are part of an opportunity like this, it will up level your culture. The positivity that I see day to day, the team atmosphere that individuals who have been given these opportunities have is unmatched, in my opinion. I've been in very large, very well-known organizations in this industry, and people are making great money. They love what they do, but you see more people get complacent, and they tend to just take for granted what they have. I have not seen that once since I've been part of an organization that supports these types of opportunities. People are willing to, from the highest level of the organization all the way down to folks who are participating, everybody helps everybody. Everybody, it's the whole rising tides, raises all ships scenario. But it's really hard to explain the amount of human good that you feel day to day. People want to show up. People want to work longer because they're really getting a lot out of it. And you see the light bulb kind of flip on. The more positivity they put into what they're doing and what they're learning, the more they reap more benefits from doing that. And that's nothing you can train. There's no onboarding document that can make that happen. When you bring somebody into an organization like that, it just, by the nature of the opportunity alone, it seems to be something that I'm still having a hard time understanding, but it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
I will say, I've been at Banyan, I guess, for about 10 months now. We're close to it. And Matthew, one of the things that we really appreciate as people who work for you is that you give us permission to fail and help us come back to the table and find solutions, and you clear out the obstacles for us so that we can do our jobs. We really appreciate that. I think all of us have had experiences where we had leaders and supervisors who did not do that. And so we really appreciate the way that you lead us. And you're right there with us, right? You write code with everybody. And so we appreciate that tremendously.
Yeah, I would say one final thing I'll say that I've heard my entire life, and I really leaned into this, that I'll say is, like, one of our mottos should be, success is built on a mountain of failure. Like that, you learn a lot by allowing yourself to trip over yourself, and you can learn more out of doing that than not. So every organization, whether you are doing fair chance or not, you should leave people leeway to be human beings, and because we're gonna make mistakes.
I love that.
Bottom
I
line.
love that. This next question is for both of you guys, and we'll start with you, Miss Stacey. We want to talk about this from a leadership perspective. I mean, what you guys have built, Persevere is not a competitor in the reentry space. We are the leaders in the reentry space. What does it take to build a program that actually leads to long-term employment, not just training?
Gosh, that's a loaded question. I'm going to piggyback off of what Matthew just said. We got there by making a ton of mistakes, and we acknowledge those mistakes. Emma has worked for me for several years now, and I am the first to say, well, that didn't work. Let's try something different, right? And then, hey, let's try this for 60 days. This might not work either. But I think there is two parts to this, though. Part one is Persevere hires a lot of our graduates. We also hire a lot of individuals who have been impacted by the justice system in one form or another. So our organization, our grassroots, are literally built on the exact same group of individuals that we serve every single day. So I think that in itself is part of the reason why we have grown to a national infrastructure. The other part of that is I hire people smarter than me. And so we bring in individuals that have they're a subject matter expert in many different ways. And so having somebody come in that has experienced growth or workforce development or training in a different area than what Persevere does, I think is another reason why we've grown the way that we have. We also realize that we're not the best at everything. And what we're not good at is where we work really hard to bring in those other partners so that they can deliver a side that we can't. And so, I think I preach to you guys all the time about an ecosystem, right? Yeah. Like it should be an ecosystem of many different organizations coming together for the benefit of the individuals that we serve. And that's where there are things that we're really good at, but we're having to pivot every day because whether it's technology changing or it's the region of the United States, that there's certain cultural differences between our students versus, the those in Florida versus somebody in Arizona. So I think it's just an ongoing changing, it's almost like a roadway, right? Where you've got
Yeah.
bumps and curves and you build an overpass because things don't quite work right. And so I think, to have that national infrastructure, you've just got to be able to really pivot and change and listen to those individuals that have more experience in areas and that do have the
I
lived
love that.
experience.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Absolutely. I cannot imagine all of the million decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis to keep this machine running, right, and staying on the track. Matthew, the same question, right? At Banyan, we pivoted from, just a training ground, but, through God's providence and through your all's leadership, we've been able to keep a lot of the people that were in the OJT program, and now they're full-time employees. I get to, experience the fruit of that labor. So what does it take to build a program that leads to long-term employment?
Yeah, one word that comes to mind is consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're not going to get there overnight.
Yep.
And that's been true my entire career, and I think it can be applied to any business. I think culturally in the United States, especially, we're successful economically because we have entrepreneurs who consistently make a better decision every day, and they learn from mistakes that they've made, as we kind of mentioned earlier. Banyan's no different. When I started here last year, taking over the company, we knew we wanted to do things a little bit differently. And, it just so happened I have a very entrepreneurial background. So it was just, okay, how do I apply that to this organization? And also always keeping the mission in mind. It doesn't matter what kind of business you're building, whether it's one that supports the type of goals that Banyan and Persevere has, or any other type of organization, you have to know what your mission is.
Yeah.
And you have to make the best possible decisions consistently every day. And when you make a bad one, you adjust to that and you learn from that, and you just don't stop. That's
Yeah.
the bottom line. Keep showing up. Not every day is going to feel good. There's definitely been some bumps in the road over my entire career, but definitely over the last year, you look back at the end of a time frame, whatever that time frame is, and we've come a long way in 1 year just by following those rules of just being consistent and having a mission behind your decision making.
I want to add to that. Matthew and I talk at least once a day, whether it's by text message or Slack or not by email because he never checks his email, but that's a different story.
It's an ongoing joke in my entire career, by the way. So it's not just here, that's for sure. Yeah.
But I think that, and we say this all the time, Persevere is going to succeed if Banyan succeeds, and Banyan succeeds if Persevere succeeds, right?
Yeah.
And so it takes both of us, right? And so I go to Matthew when I have a random idea and I'm trying to find some validation or somebody to say, stop. Terrible idea, right? And he's a great partner in that. But I also lean on him a lot too, because I've been doing this for almost 10 years, but at the end of the day, I am not a CTO. And so I really think that part of our growth as an organization, both organizations, is because him and I do communicate as much as we do.
I love that. And I know a lot of, I think what I've been hearing too is just talking about the growth, the hurdles that have existed, the bumps along the way, and the positives. And I would love to ask you both, what right now in this space that we operate in is giving you hope?
Matthew, you want to go?
So, well, the main driver for me, I'll just keep coming back to this because I've worked for large companies who, just to be blunt, make a lot of money because they, found a niche or whatever. It all boils down to, I get to see the mission in action every single day, and staying focused on that alone. You're gonna, if you have a purpose and you have a goal and that leads to some greater good, some ripple effect, if you will. I may never know how much change this organization has affected. It's certainly affected me in a very positive way as well, but I think that's what it boils down to.
For me, I feel like every day I live in this world of data. How many participants have graduated the program? How many do we currently have in the program? What's our recidivism rate? What's our job placement rate, right? And so a lot of times everything is tied back to a number. But what that number says to me is that's how many individuals are now self-sustaining and providing for their families. That is how many individuals now have a clear pathway, whether it's a pathway based on the technology training that they obtained to find a job in technology, maybe it's technology adjacent, or maybe it's not that at all. And they went to work as a manager at McDonald's, but they're taking something with them, right? Regardless of what it is. And so I think for me, in the current setting that we're in, it is hearing the stories of, I just got promoted at Checker as a senior engineer, right? And that comes from someone who spent 8 years in prison. Or it's, I just got custody of my kids. I got my first apartment.
Yeah.
We have celebrated things which might seem small, let me rephrase that, which might seem small to some, but are really big for others. And that's coming off of SNAP benefits and being able to purchase your own food or buying your first car. So they're reuniting with your family, right? And so I think when I think about the word hope, it does go back to the data, but the data also proves the stories of success that comes from it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
And I think when we talk about fair chance hiring, right, we talk about all of these, that this is more than just numbers, right? And we talk about employers who open themselves to being a fair chance employer are a part of that story of hope and helping provide that for people, right? So thank you. Thank you both for answering that question.
One thing to add to is, we always talk about safer communities. We always talk about reduction in crime. And at the end of the day, providing somebody with that fair chance has a direct impact on both of those. And so it's more than just offering somebody a job. It's offering your community an opportunity to really focus on the crime that's happening, the safety of the community, the increase in economic. I mean, there's so many different things that tie back to that fair chance. But I think a lot of times we are so focused on fair chance being job focused only that we forget all of those other things that circle around it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Guys, as we wrap up, we just have one more question. And Matthew, I'll let you go first. What is one mindset shift that you'd encourage in the professional world around fair chances? What do we want our audiences to know about fair chances that might promote a second glance at hiring practices? Or like Stacey just mentioned, look at the bigger scope of the impact, right? What's one thing that you want our audiences to know about that shift?
Yeah, I think that the first thing that comes to mind is you'll get to see something that we've always been taught or you've heard over your life. You'll get to see it in action, and that is it's better to give than receive. Like if you will give a fair chance to somebody, you're gonna see more benefit out of it in other areas of your organization that you didn't expect. Does it help with the bottom line? I'm sure there's data on that, but there's more to it than that. So I think if organizations can shift their thinking a little bit, this goes for any organization that has a high turnover rate or they're trying to figure out how to staff appropriately. You want to improve your culture at your organization and you don't know how to do it. Like, give this a shot because you're going to be surprised by the results if you'll pour into that mindset a little more. And it's not just about the numbers. Like, you'll see other areas of improvement if you can just take on that mindset.
I love that. Absolutely. Stacey, same question.
First, I think that if you are an employer or potential employer, one of the things you need to do is revisit your policies.
Yeah.
A lot of policies were written a long time ago. There has been a big shift, especially where ban the box comes in. But what we don't stop to view or review is the fact that ban the box is great. But if you're still going to circle back around and look at that person's history, that's not a fair chance, right? So
Yeah.
I think as a country, we have to get to the point to where we're looking at the skill set of the individual and the soft skills that they have. I've been told 100 times I'd rather have somebody with soft skills training than I would somebody with hard skills training. And so I think we have to open up our mindset. The other thing I would say is very similar to Matthew. I joked earlier about how I tugged at his heartstring, but it is really true. I mean, if you mentor or volunteer, and you work with our graduates and you see their determination, they are some of the most determined because they have something to prove. And so when you get to know that person and you get to know who they are now, you start advocating for them and you start referring them to others within your network. And so I would encourage anyone to volunteer or mentor. Step into our classrooms. I think even for Matthew, you'll probably agree when you walked into the women's class the first time, it's like, oh my gosh, now I get to see him in action. And, you walk into a prison, but when you walk into that classroom, it's not a prison. It is a true technology training class, right? And so I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, I wish people were a little more open, a little more, just willing.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. For sure. Before we close, Emma, any follow-up here? I appreciate your insights, and I never want to deprive our audiences of just what you bring to the table.
Oh man, I was not prepared for insights. I really just want to thank both Matthew and Stacey for their time and their insight. I think for me, the human aspect is what personally sticks out the most in what we do. And, I know with businesses and employers, right? Matthew mentioned that bottom line, and I know logically that matters, right? But I would really implore people to definitely so consider that human aspect and what an opportunity can do for somebody. And we were at an event in Nashville not that long ago, and one of the speakers at the event just talked about how just opening the door for one person, right? Even if it's just one person, the difference that can make. And that's stuck with me, that speaker at that event. So.
And
I love that.
it's a domino effect, right? Because if you give that one person a chance, it has a direct impact on that entire family, the children, and then generations to come.
Yes, absolutely.
And one final thing, I would be remiss if I didn't at least put my sales hat on. So if you've made it this far in the video, one thing to kind of segue on top of what I just said about organizations changing their mindset is built on Banyan is built on these folks. I would say 95% of my employees came through the program. So if you are a little reluctant, like hire Banyan, we can actually show you firsthand, and we can even help you deliver on your product or your technology needs. Or just come to us. I'm happy to talk to anybody that wants more information, other organizations that want to hire our folks. But you can kind of like, I don't know how else to say it, but you can try it before you buy it if you want to hire Banyan, because you've got me and a couple of other folks who have been in this industry for over 20 years. If you combine our experiences, like over 50 years of experience, we lead our teams and we do real enterprise development work. So call us up and go to the website. Let us know how we can help.
For sure. And I know Jake and I can plug in that website at the, either in the caption or somewhere along with the video. But you're right, Matthew. Don't underestimate the work and the completed product, because I'm sure anyone who goes to the site and sees the products that have been built would be blown away.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. If you were watching today and you were intrigued, right, we thank you so much for being here. We started today by asking what happens when we say yes. And what we hope you're leaving with is this, that saying yes isn't just good for the person receiving it. It changes you too, right? Thank you to Stacey, to Matthew, and to Emma, and everyone who joined us today. Keep going. And if today's conversation left you wanting more from these two people, we have something for you. Leadership Link Up from Code to Cause is a podcast where Stacey and Matthew will pull back the curtain on what it really takes to lead a mission-driven tech organization. They'll talk about the strategy, the hard calls, and the vision that keeps them going. New episodes are going to be dropping really soon. Find it wherever you listen and hit subscribe, and we'll see you there. Guys, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
you.